Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Anna. I'm a psychologist specialized in emotional binge eating, and I have suffered from both of those things for over 16 years and now helping others end emotional binge eating without severe dieting or restricting. So today I want to talk about a little bit what are some of the things that I have personally done that have helped me on my journey to end emotional and binge eating after so many years being stuck not only in emotional and binge eating but also a lot of distorted ways of eating, which I will gladly make a new video if you want to know about it. So first of all, I had to admit that diets don't work, and that me being on a diet since the age of 12, 13 have put me in the cycle of restricting and binging. I always thought that if I diet, all my problems will be solved. I will be skinny enough to be happy, or all my problems will disappear just because I will feel so good in my skin. That could not be further from the truth. So I think the number one thing is to admit that something that served a purpose for so long actually didn't help me in the main thing, which was healing my relationship with food and ending emotional binge eating. I think dieting is a great tool, if you need to lose weight. But for an emotional binge eater who uses food in so many different ways other than eating, it's a disaster, because I would lose the weight, but then I would gain it all back because I was eating for all the wrong reasons and putting more calories into my body. I was not paying attention to my triggers, and then the weight would go up, and I would blame myself for not being good enough at the dieting, and go back to the cycle. So number one thing that I did was I listed all my food rules, every single one of them, like more veggies, more water, more protein, no eating after 6, no sugar, no carbs, no fats, like every single thing that I would, put on myself to follow. I just wrote a list. It was a big list because if you have been on a lot of diets, you have a lot of food rules. So I had to put all of them and ditch them one by one, literally by dragging myself to eat later in the evening after 6 p.m. or by having something sweet and not pushing away the craving, or having a meal that doesn't contain protein and veggies at all times, so on and so forth. So ditching food rules was number one. In the same line, ditching the dieting mentality, because my mentality was very much like all or nothing. I'm either on a diet or off a diet. Like I'm eating good foods, bad foods. There was no mixture. I was not able to eat like 80% good, as they say, and 20% like a little bit less nutritious foods, not to name them any other names. So I was challenging myself to make a meal plan that would include my favorite foods. And how I did it was that, for example, if I was craving chips, but I was so afraid to have the chips on its own, I would put chips, for example, next to my salad, or I will have dessert immediately after dinner or after lunch, or I would use full fat milk in my smoothies because that was not an option before. So bit by bit, I was just incorporating the small changes and watching what will happen. Obviously, nothing happened. My body pretty much stayed the same, but it was an important exercise to understand that I don't have to eat perfectly in order to have overall a good relationship with food. So ditching the diet rules, ditching the dieting mentality. Then came the number 3, ditching the scale. I didn't want to have that relationship with the scale where I will be constantly judged by a number. I wanted to see how I feel. And that's very important because you need to know your own hunger and satiety cues. You need to be aware when are you hungry physically or emotionally. And if you're hungry emotionally, what is actually going on? Which brings me to number 4, knowing your emotional triggers. It's so important. Like if you are a binge eater and if you are an emotional eater, you need to know what triggers you to a binge. You cannot go through life like as a binge eater and be like, oh, I'm great, but then I binge and it's just because. No, it's not just because, like something happened. And for me, the list was massive, but it's very good to have that list. And this is why. Like it can be a little bit overwhelming, but the more you know what triggers you, the better you're prepared next time. Like you figure out a way how you can deal with your triggers in a bit of a, let's say, healthier way. For me, my triggers were mostly coming in the evening. After a long day, you decompress, but then different emotions and different problems and uncomfortable feelings come up, and I just didn't want to deal with them, and I would eat. So I had to figure out what are my triggers as well as what I can do differently. And I think here it's very important to say, when people tell you find something else to do, it's easier said than done, but you could brainstorm a little bit. What is this other thing in life that gives you equal pleasure as food? Not just something else that you can do. Like, I could run, but I don't want to run, so it will never work. So I had to find things that would give me pleasure as much as eating, and so that I can cut that connection between a trigger and my urge. I had to cut it by giving it something else to do. So for example, if I was bored, and boredom for me meant eating cookies, it's not the boredom that is making me eat cookies, it's the urge. There is a boredom, then there is the urge to eat cookies, and then I would eat cookies. This is what I needed to break between the boredom itself and the urge. So what I did, first of all, I acknowledged that it's not boredom that's making me eat cookies, it's my urge. And then how to break the connection by doing something different. So if the boredom comes, there is no urge for cookies, there is an urge for, and then you can put whatever it is you want to do. I'm a big walker. I'm very good at journaling, so I chose those kind of activities instead, because they would really hype me up in a way that the urge would pass. Another thing which I did was my relationship with exercise, and that's such an important thing. People don't really talk about it, but if you are an emotional binge eater, if you have binge eating tendencies, very few people don't have the need to burn off their calories or earn them. So I lived by the model of whatever you eat, if you eat more, you need to burn it off. Or if you plan to eat, you need to work out before so that you have the right to eat those calories. I ditched some of my workouts that were very much causing me to be very hungry as well. And that had that mentality of, all that matters is how much you have burned. So no more cardio, no more heavy lifting. I am more into walking, swimming, and doing more like body weight exercises. It keeps me sane, and I don't think about the heart rate and the calories that are burned and so on and so forth. Because I ditched the scale, as I mentioned, I also ditched my watch. I don't have an Apple Watch anymore. I really don't want to be controlled by a number, because again, it will perpetuate like you need to diet or look how much you have binged, and I didn't want to be in that cycle. And I would say one more important thing was that during my recovery, I had a lot of slip-ups, and I think it's normal, but we don't want to have them. Like, we want the journey to be linear without roadblocks and without slip-ups. And I used to call them failures, but my therapist said they're learning curves. It just means that you haven't mastered everything yet. What does that mean? It means that you don't know yourself enough. You don't know your triggers enough. You don't know your emotions enough. Be curious and be grateful even that you have this issue, because you're able to learn more about yourself and help yourself in the process of healing your binge eating, your emotional eating, and overall a distorted relationship with food.